Good evening, everyone. My name is Tobia Chimoko. I'm NCNW's Rankin Mon Valley Pittsburgh section publicity chair, and tonight I am hosting this episode on entrepreneurship, specifically in relation to Black women. So tonight we have a very special guest. Her name is Julia Brazier, and she's actually an entrepreneur, and we're just gonna spend the hour conversing, talking, asking questions. And if you have any questions as well, feel free to call in on our live chat. So, Julia, are you there?
I'm here. Am I here? Can you hear me?
I think you're muted.
Oh. What about now?
We might be having some technical difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Okay. Can anyone else hear her?
What shall I say?
Okay, perfect. So do you mind speaking one more time?
Not at all.
There you are. Okay. I actually had my computer muted. My apologies.
No.
But it's great to meet you. I've met you once or twice prior, and you're such an amazing person. And it's great to have you on here, not only as an entrepreneur, but as a Black woman, as a woman who's had a lot of work experience as well, and who has a unique perspective on entrepreneurship. But before that, let's just do an icebreaker. How are you today?
I'm well. I am happy to be here. I literally came in, got off the road, and set up my computer. So I couldn't leave Columbus until 1 today. And so, yeah, I was pushing it, cutting it close. So I'm here in Pittsburgh for the weekend.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So I'm good. You're a little bit out of sorts, a little bit sleepy, but I'm good.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Hopefully our conversation revs you up from one Pittsburgher, well, not a native Pittsburgher, but from one Pittsburgher to somebody in Pittsburgh. Just happy to have you here.
Thank you.
So let's dive in a little bit on your history. I know a lot of people assume that entrepreneurship is something that you can do immediately after school, or you have to quit your 9-to-5, or you have to do it when you're young. But can you talk about your journey to becoming a recent entrepreneur?
So first of all, if I can take the liberty, so I and my daughter, we participate with girltrek.org and their Black History boot camps. So they just finished a Black History boot camp, and I was catching up on the way here. And so we started kind of like our own tradition and following them of telling who we are the daughters of. And so that plays to my history. So if I could, and it does connect with, why I'm doing what I do now. So I'm Julia Isabel Brazier. I'm the daughter of Nora Ramos Edmonds, who's the daughter of Julia Bisnar Ramos. And I'm also, from my father's side, I'm the granddaughter of Cora Isabel Edmonds. So I'm named after both of my grandmothers. So there's that. And it was actually, again, y'all, I refer to my daughter, Ari, all the time because we're so interconnected. But she's the one who actually got me intentionally focusing on this connection to what I do and my history and the cultural legacy that I'm expressing. She came home from a weekend kind of retreat, like anti-racist thing, and she was like, "Mama, they had us do cultural sharing, and I shared about your sewing and your crafting and everything, and um, how your mom, taught you so much and supported you so much, and how you, because she makes jewelry and she's an artist in her own right, how you made it so easy for me." And I was like, doggone, I hadn't like just intentionally thought about that connection and how much I'm reflecting that.
Yeah.
So there's that. And my mother, and I assume my grandmother before her, my mother was a seamstress.
Hmm.
So I literally grew up underneath the sewing machine. I mean, that was one of my first play spaces was underneath the sewing machine. So I have sewn all my life. Um, and, I've made money off of sewing here and there, but my day job career was in training early childhood educators. That's what I did for almost 30 years. But I just
So,
always, I've sewn for my family. I've sewn for myself. I'm small, so
yeah.
clothes are better when I make them myself. So it's always been with me. And I don't just sew, I do lots of stuff. And, I knit, I crochet, I do embroidery. I dabble in weaving baskets. I have a Cricut machine. This is new to me in the last year.
Nice.
So I you know, I make my own t-shirts.
Nice.
So I just dabble in a lot of things.
Hmm.
So, and had always said that when I retire, that I was just gonna like go on the craft fair circuit, and then Ari and I, like we used to say, oh well, she had it set up where she was going to work full time, she's going to have a career, but she was going to do craft shows on the side. And oh well, Mama, you can be the person staffing the craft show. I'm like, oh, okay, so you got my weekend. So it's like I would be. This according to my kids, I'd be watching my grandkids during the week and doing the craft shows on the weekend. So it's always been like in the conversation jokingly, but so really pandemic made me see some things, make me realize some things, made me decide to go ahead and retire, move back to my hometown, and just give it a try. So that's kind of whirlwind how I got here.
For sure. And I thought that you said something really interesting where you mentioned that for 30 years you worked in training early childhood development, if I have that.
Well, like, some I would say in child development, training and mentoring, like the last 10 years was as a mentor for childcare providers. So yeah, so I was in child development. I was a childcare center director, YMCA summer camp director,
Nice.
um, you know, spent a, so I guess I've been an entrepreneur before because early when I only had two kids, I was, I did childcare from my home.
Hmm.
But ever since then, I was doing mostly training things. A lot of probably, let's see, I have to go by how old my kids are. So probably in like the last 25 or so years, whenever I had a chance, I would do things that related to um, anti-bias teaching,
Hmm.
anti-racism,
And
and that kind of thing. That was like my one of the platforms. So if there was an opportunity to do workshops somewhere, I would always want to do it from that angle. If there was an opportunity to include some kind of making, in there somehow or other, that was going to be me. I was the one that was always or encouraging the people that I mentored, like, oh, you could make this.
yeah.
Girl, you can make this yourself. And so those are things that just have always been in me. Like, I wasn't a formal teacher, but, I think I'm one of those kind of people that training and teaching is just a skill that came naturally. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
And I want to touch on that as well. In terms of being an entrepreneur, do you think that being a mentor, being a teacher has helped you kind of break into that space and helped you navigate kind of starting your own business? And let's start with that first.
I'm going to say absolutely, because for the last 10 years, and then, well, for many of the years, but most focused in the last 10 years, I was working for Auburn University, so in Alabama, and mentoring licensed family child care providers. So they're doing child care in their own homes. They have their own business.
Yeah.
And the mentoring was toward helping them become nationally accredited. So they're running their own business. So there's definitely a business aspect there.
Mm-hmm.
And so and there's those like universal business practices.
Yeah.
So I had to be really familiar. Like one of the assets I had was that I too had been a family child care provider.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had to know about licensing and following, like local ordinances, and maintaining a business, interacting, dealing with, with your clientele for them as parents. So I think that they're those universally transferable skills, and then being resourceful, because a lot of times it was being a mentor in any field is like wearing all kind of hats. So
Yeah.
it's like just kind of being able to think of a starting point. Oh, well, let's research that. Let's find out which avenue to go down and so forth. And so I would say definitely it has prepared me in a lot of ways. Confidence building,
Mm-hmm.
networking, I definitely plays into it. And I had to do a lot of networking in order to support the women I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it all played in together.
Nice. And I want to touch on your networking as well and the skills you've acquired over the last 30 years to become a formal entrepreneur. And I think that idea of informal versus formal is very interesting, because you talked about how you did many things for 30 years and that could be considered entrepreneurship, but we have this idea that you need to start your own business and you need to kind of be in this sort of box to be labeled as an entrepreneur. So I think that's a interesting and fascinating point. And let's kind of pivot to your own company. How, well, okay, so in terms of your own company, how do you use your network as a Black woman to kind of expand your company, to kind of get the word out there? And do you primarily kind of focus on Black women, or do you use your network outside of that space, kind of networking with everybody to kind of get the word out there?
So first of all, I would say that my physical network,
Mm-hmm.
sadly, there aren't enough Black women in it. I'm still cultivating that.
Let's talk about that. Wait, let's
Yeah.
talk about that. Because there recently, over the last 3 years, and let's say last year, 2020, there's been a boom of entrepreneurs. And yet,
Mm-hmm.
when I talk to many Black women, they say, I don't know that many Black women entrepreneurs, or I don't know a lot of Black women in my network. Why do you think that is?
Okay, so first of all, back up to the term entrepreneur. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really see myself as an entrepreneur, honestly. And
Interesting.
some people would, the hardcore business people, and maybe people who need to have a name or a title, they might be like, oh, like I'm selling for less or something. But I'm really a creative person. And honestly, I'm retired. I'm blessed. I'm going to eat whether or not I sell something. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really, I'm, as far as the business and trying to make money off of it, I'm
Yeah.
like not trying to have you say, ooh, I really like those hats. Can I get 30 of them? No, I want to make 5 hats and sell those 5, and then go make some other thing that just popped into my head that I want to try out.
And I
And
think that
so I think that, and I also don't think of myself as an artist either. I'm
interesting.
a really good copycat. I consider myself an expert with a sewing machine. Okay, and so, and a creative spirit.
Yeah.
But I'm not making anything that hasn't been done already. You know what I mean?
And
I
I
might
would
be adding a
argue,
little unique flair to it, but like everything in the universe has already been done.
mhm.
I'm just recirculating it, you know? So
No, that's a
so
fair
there's
point.
that. The entrepreneurship thing, there's that. My network of Black women
Mhm.
is that so, my ex-husband was a Navy officer who retired. We lived in the suburbs. Our networks, we just we didn't live and circulate or work around enough Black women, Black people, period.
Mhm.
I have regrets about that, but then there are things that I don't regret. um, it's that's just the life that I live. Then the
Yeah.
other thing too, I'm just gonna put it out there is, I'll say to people, will you look at me? It takes a minute for my sisters to accept me as a sister, be it my Filipina sisters or my Black sisters, because I don't look enough like any of them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so, I claim my Asianness as much as I claim my Blackness. So I really don't move and circulate around Asian people either, much less than even Black folks. But my mother raised me. It's in my spirit, just like, my mother and my father raised me. It's in my spirit, and I have every right to claim it and name it and work from it. But I don't have that strong of a network that I would say, oh, I have, and I also just think that, like what I do, I noticed this. I did a craft fair a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't really, I'm not going to call it a craft fair, I'm going to call it a vendor fair. And it
Mhm.
was a lot of, I'm going to say, 30 something Black women, in that age group. And they were selling like, oils and scents and, home crafted
Yeah.
makeup products and waist beads and those kind of things. I'm not in that age group. I'm like,
Mm.
I don't, I'm just not in that demographic that seems to be networking a lot. I'm more, if I'm thinking of the network of Black women that I know of, I would put myself more in the category of like the women who are out there quilting and something a little bit more settled. Uh, so yeah. But I also have started like there's a Columbus Black owned businesses.
Yeah.
I connected with them long before I ever, moved.
Became a formal entrepreneur.
Right. Even when I was a childcare provider, I knew we were getting transferred to the Virginia Beach area from South Carolina, and so I already started connecting with people. When I moved from New Orleans to Birmingham, I started connecting out ahead of time. Looking at people, writing and looking at websites and things like that. So for me, that's the kind of networking that I'm most comfortable with. And then the other stuff is just word of mouth and just friends and people that have said, like, for example, one person, she actually happens to be my god sister, but
Mhm.
I hadn't seen her physically in like 25 years. But on the Black owned business page, if someone's like, hey, I need someone to help me with a prom dress, and she's on there tagging me going, well, Julie, is that something you can help with? So this is that kind of stuff that I think we should all do for each other whenever we can. So yeah, I don't think it's networking in the sense that someone else might think of it as,
Yeah.
but that's kind of how it works for me.
And that's a fair point. But I wanted to go back to something you said earlier about how you didn't think you were an entrepreneur. And I guess I'd have to respectfully disagree because I think entrepreneurs are people who create things and they work for themselves. And in just that sense, I think that you would fall into that. And on your point about the fact that everything in the universe has already been made, so to speak, I think, well, not actually, I think there's actually a statistic out there that says most entrepreneurs that are successful are entrepreneurs who improved on a product they already saw. So let's
Hmm.
take Bumble, for example. Bumble's a dating app that came after Tinder. Tinder came
Mhm.
first and Bumble came second. And Bumble they became a public company, and the CEO is only 31 years old, and she's actually a woman. But
Hmm.
she helped create Tinder, left Tinder, and then went to create Bumble, something that was already made. So I think
Hmm.
that you can reinvent the wheel and maybe just bedazzle it, and you could sell that as your own product. I
Yeah.
think that's the great thing about entrepreneurship, is that even though there is some sort of creativity, there's a bit of creativeness that goes into it. It's fun because you are inspired by other people. And that's what I'm getting from you, that you're inspired by a whole bunch of other people and why you create what you create. So in with that in mind, let's talk about your business. And I think we have pictures of what you actually make. And can you talk about that and your inspirations for those, and the fact that you keep taking pictures of everything? Like, even that, I think that's amazing. So you did talk about, what inspired you culturally, but I'd like to delve a little deeper into that. What, in terms of like the clothing, like the material, the designs, like what inspires you? What motivates you?
Hmm. So, first of all, I would not argue with your definition of entrepreneur or entrepreneurship. I just don't label myself as such. I just, like, even on my business card, like before I even put, sewing or anything, I
Yeah.
say creative spirit, because I, now maybe I should knock wood or whatever, but um, most crafts that I try,
Hmm.
even the first time out, I'm pretty good at it,
Yeah.
but I always go back to sewing. That's the root of what I do.
Mhm.
So there's that. What inspires me is
In terms of your creations.
into what I'm making. Yes.
Mhm.
Um, well, I think that what inspires me is, like how I said, I do believe, like, everything's circulating and recirculating in the universe. And I do believe that, there is this aspect though of building on it, and making it beautiful even. So what inspires me when it comes to sewing is just like beautiful stuff. I
Yeah.
will look at things. Okay, so my guy, my sweetheart, he always chuckles because shows, like, for example, Bridgerton, and I was watching Rain recently, and I'm like, I don't even care, like, yes, I'm hooked on these. Judge me if you want, but I'm like,
That's a
even
good show.
outside of that, I would keep watching because I'm like, will you look at those clothes? They're
Yeah, the
just like,
Victorian era, like the
yes.
bustiers and the flowy dresses. Yeah.
Right. So the beautiful fabric, and I could just go in a fabric store or just any kind of a craft store, and I'm touching everything and I'm feeling it. So I just, whatever I see as beautiful like that inspires me.
Yeah.
And I have always been into, we'll put in quotes, ethnic prints, ethnic type fabrics, and it's largely because I think even before I was doing it intentionally, I always was longing to express who I am more so. And so we joke in my family about the color combinations that Filipino women wear.
Yeah. I'm always
There's like this
happy.
brightness to it, and just
Nice.
it's, yeah, but it's just definitely not American. It's not the colors we're used to. It doesn't matter if it's winter or summer. You know what I mean? These colors that are going to be present. And just things like tropical plants and the lines and things, and even my logo is, whenever I'm putting pictures out there, I will have bamboo somewhere. Like, I try to put bamboo somewhere in anything.
Hmm.
So it's just ethnic stuff, and then just lines and beauty in things. And so like when I first saw you, I'm like, oh my god, I love that dress. And so I'm always trying to compare that, and I'm thinking, oh, this would look so good on so and so, and that. So it's just, it doesn't take much for me to, like, to spur an idea or something. So yeah.
So, what would you say to women or people in general who want to be entrepreneurs, but they can't think of what to create? Because to you,
Hmm.
it's easy, but I suppose if you could imagine or put yourselves in the shoes of somebody who maybe they're a jack of all trades, so they're average at everything, or maybe they are unsure of what they want to go into, what advice would you have for them when they can't think of what to make?
I think it would depend on the urgency
Hmm.
of, them wanting to do this. I So even when I was mentoring people, or if I was just, having a conversation with a friend, I think there's a lot of internal work that we need to do. Like, we
Hmm.
have to really know ourselves. And so it's like something inspires everybody. But some of us, either, we're raising families, we're too caught up in life just coming at us, and so we don't see and know. But if we step back and take some time, be it journaling or whatever, therapy, whatever, to find out more about ourselves, like, we
Hmm.
have to really know ourselves. And so if it was somebody and I knew them well enough, because relationships are the base of, everything,
Hmm.
um, I would want to say, well, look, you got to do some introspection. You need to think about, there are things, and then you start uncovering, oh, I'm always drawn toward this.
Hmm.
Or, oh, yeah, I am really good at that. Okay, well, you're really good at it, but do you like it? Do you love it? So I will use my son. So I have three sons and then my daughter. So, like, right? And so he's mid 30s, and he is just now
I
starting to put his
apologize.
name
Can you
out there
repeat that? Sorry, I think you cut out for a
about
second.
my son.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Where did I was talking about my son, like, as an example for entrepreneurs and, like, trying to figure out.
Yes.
So he's an attorney and an accountant, right?
Oh wow.
But he works, like, for the Securities and Exchange Commission. So I don't even understand what that means. But he he does beautiful carpentry, and he's just now starting to put his name out there, like, for commission pieces and so forth. And
Hmm.
it's because it's like he's realizing, oh, I love this enough, and I do really great work. And so that's like his happy place. And I can relate to that so much, because for me, it's like, that's why I say I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. I just consider myself someone who's blessed enough now to be in my happy place almost every day. And so, and then my second son, who he also has just launched a business in January, but he is, like, so driven, and I see that a lot of very career minded younger people. He was so driven. He knew, like, he had this plan back in eighth grade and has hit every milestone, right?
Oh, wow.
But then I would get these calls, well, mom, what's going to happen? I'm worried. What if I wake up and I'm 30? Well, he's past 30 now, but he'd be like, what if I wake up and I'm 30 and I'm just not happy and all that? And what I could always say to him was, like, you got to keep checking in. If you're not, like, studying yourself and checking in with, your higher power, if you're not constantly checking in, then it's more likely that you're going to go this route where you're unhappy. So I think that if you want to start a business and things, it's like, it'll seem like these things just fall into place, but they don't. It's
Mm.
like the universe pulls it together because you've been working on yourself and you've been working on your connections. So it might look like, oh, Julie just retired, decided to start this business. But no, these building blocks have been happening all my life without me ever thinking about it. Why? Because
Mm.
I knew what I was passionate about early on, and I was just always following my passion. And so the universe rewards me by now giving me the time and space to just do it.
Mm.
So I know that was a long answer and probably fluffy, but
Oh no, that's totally fine. So you talked about how your son is now monetizing his carpentry work, even though he's working for the SEC. And
mhm.
what is your opinion on people who monetize their hobbies? to become an entrepreneur. I hear conflicting sides, and I hear one side where it's self-care, so we shouldn't have to monetize everything, and it's because of capitalism that people feel like they have to monetize their hobbies. And then I hear on the other side that if you love something so much, then why not make money off of it? But as somebody who has done that, what are your thoughts on it, or any contingencies, or yeah?
Well, I think it's not an either or, it's a both and. Like I was saying earlier, um, it's I would like to just make what I want to make.
Mm-hmm.
What is it, like flights of fancy? I would like to just make what I want to make, but I want to do it for free. And so in order to do it for free, I need to sell some of these things that I make. And I honestly don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see, okay, first of all, I am always one who will call capitalism. I see that, I realize that, I think it's, for me, I would like it to be a in it but not of it kind of thing. Like, I still need to eat, so I got to earn money somehow. This is the standard way to do it. But
Mm-hmm.
then, as much as possible, I want to not participate. So that's like almost. I think that making my own clothes and doing these things, making my own clothes, recycling, um, you know, I don't have a garden, but planting a garden, these things, where we either keep things in circulation or don't buy and don't participate in it, those are forms of resistance, but we still have to eat. So I don't see a problem with that necessarily. I think though, what I do have a problem is people. Who would I say? Sometimes I think that people cheapen what they do
In
in
what
order to
way?
mass produce. You know what I mean? Like, what I'm saying. Okay, so we know that. Okay, let's talk about earrings, right? I brought a bunch of earrings to for Ari to help me finish up this weekend. Let's talk about these earrings. Well, I have decided that between the cost of the materials and the cost of my time, not just my time, but plus my level of skill, and to make a little to pay myself and make a little markup. So let's just say I think these earrings should be $17, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you could go on Amazon and order these Afrocentric earrings, and you can get a dozen of them for $20,
Mm-hmm.
made in China. So then this sister over here who is making her own earrings and doing a beautiful job of it, then she's gonna, just for the sake of making the sales, she's going to sell these things at dirt cheap because she's gone and done these price comparisons on Amazon, and that stuff wasn't even made here. So you see,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a cognitive dissonance kind of thing for me. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I want to make money off of these things, but um, I don't want to sell myself cheap. I don't want to imply that. Um, I don't want to imply that my work is cheap,
Yeah.
and I have a bit of resentment for the mass produced stuff that we get from whatever country. Obviously, it's not anything about Asians. It's the fact that we have very talented people right here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so and it all points back to capitalism, yes,
Yeah.
and us not being able to appreciate something that's well made and the time that it takes, or so all of that.
For sure. Um, that's a good point. I think that the conversation of cheapening your work, it can definitely be expanded upon, because I think that's more of like an economy question, where like, okay, how much does it cost to make versus like how much are you selling it, and all of that stuff that comes into like how much of a profit we can make. But it does all go into capitalism. So I'll agree with you. I'll definitely agree with you there. So in terms of, let's kind of go back a little bit, and let's go back a little bit and talk about like your network, and how we talked earlier about you maybe not knowing, or you being, it was difficult for you to relate to either Asians or Black women, because it takes a while when somebody first sees you to distinguish or say either or say and, for example. So do you think that that has had an effect on your work and you starting a business later or sooner or however long it took you?
Um, okay, so first of all, I would say I don't think I have a problem relating to either or. And this sounds very self-centered. I don't think
No.
that I have a problem relating to either or.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that it takes time for me to be accepted by either or. You
Yes, that's a
know,
better,
so
yeah, that's
there's,
a better
and
phrase.
I do think that that's a difference because just is this another layer of code switching? You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
So, like for example, when I lived in Guam for 2 years, there were so many Filipinos in Guam, and it's like everywhere. I fell right in, except that I don't speak Tagalog fluently, but I fell right in. There was like no problem relating, and I looked like everybody on the island, so on and so forth, and I fell right in. It is here in this country. It's colorism. That's what it is. Plain and simple. It's colorism. It's like you have to prove who you are, what you're worth, and so on and so forth to be in whatever the in group is. It's like clear I'm not white, but just all my life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what is she? And then it's like is colorism. People are not comfortable, and I'm not just talking about Black folk. People are not comfortable with other people unless they can classify them somehow, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so there's just that,
So
gotta,
maybe not colorism, but maybe like an emphasis on where you belong, so to speak. Like,
yeah, but
because I think I understand what you're saying. Like maybe in Britain, for example, like people aren't like that pressed to like say you're this, but in the US, you must be labeled something. Like when I went to
mhm.
Cuba, for example, they have many words for many types of people, and there's a whole bunch of rainbows there, but they kind of are just like, okay, like you're maybe this, but I don't know. But in America, it's maybe one drop rule, or you're white, you're Spanish, you're Black, you're Asian. And within those groups, you're something else. Um, so do you think it's more of the emphasis or the sensitivity to race that America has? And I just want to also acknowledge that there's a caller on the line. So after this, we will definitely
Okay.
bring in that caller.
Um, I would still point to colorism as a huge root for it.
Mm.
Um, and it's okay. For example, and this would play into okay, especially in the last year or so, I've started buying like a lot of Ankara prints and things, and so making things out of that.
Mm.
But for like one thing is, I remember this was years and years ago. I'm in the grocery store. I'm buying an Essence magazine, and the cashier kind of like snickers. It was kind of like, like what am I doing buying this magazine for Black women?
Mm.
That kind of a thing. And so, especially nowadays when we talk about appropriation and everything, I do think it could hurt some of my business if someone's like thinking that, I'm misappropriating by, by focusing on Afrocentric things or so forth. So
Mm.
I think that was not going to deter me because I'm drawn to these, these colorful prints and using them. I love sewing with it and so on and so forth. But I just think there's an awareness there.
Mm.
So, but I still it points to the racist history we have in this country that has taught us to look at each other in certain ways to divide us. It points back to that, and then like some of the things that you mentioned and everything, I wouldn't discount them. Again, a lot of these things are not either or; they're both and.
Mm.
That would be my answer.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks for the robust answer. And we have a caller. I believe their name is Lana or Lena. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Everyone is good. Hi, ladies. How are you all?
Good.
Hello.
Hi. I just want to say I really am enjoying your program today. I really like your guest, Julia. I think you're doing a great job.
Thank
I just
you.
wanted to say, getting back to you pricing your items, I really like your concept. I think what I took away from your conversation about pricing your items, that of course you want to make a profit, but you don't want to exploit people like capitalism does. And I really like that because when you put in quality work with quality products, the other stuff that's mass produced really can't compare. So I think your philosophy, your strategy is right on. I feel people, yeah, you can make a profit, but you can do it without exploiting. I think that's what you were saying, because I think $17 for a pair of earrings is good. You know, especially when someone's taking their time, probably no two pair will be alike. And so I just wanted to say that and keep doing what you're doing, because you're an inspiration to people who, once they retire, you can continue on and live your life and live your dream. And then I just want to touch just a little bit on when someone might want to look at you and categorize people and classify people. And it is disheartening, but that's their ignorance, and we just have to push through it, because people might see us do a lot of different things. I hear people say, oh, Black people don't do this. And I'm like, well, where have you been under a rock? I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. And if you choose to buy essence, if you choose to buy whatever you want to buy, I think it's okay. It's an appreciation for life and humans in general. So keep doing what you're doing. I'm enjoying your show. Of course, Toby is always excellent interviewer. So both of you are doing a great job. Congratulations. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for the encouragement. I really appreciate that. A key word I take from that is exploiting. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the commentary. So let's kind of pivot. Let's pivot a little bit into it. Um, you talked about possible deterrence, how nothing's going to stop you from doing what you're doing. So what, in your experience of interacting with people, what has stopped a lot of people from becoming entrepreneurs, and what has stopped people from kind of going and creating their own businesses?
So one thing I've always heard, especially in terms of the childcare field, but now mind you, in my search to find out, how to help these women who had childcare businesses. So say I would, go to small business administration classes and meetings and workshops, and they're speaking in terms across the board. So I have always heard and known that it takes a minute. It takes, and so I think people give up too soon.
What do you mean?
So it's like, so I would say, like, okay, like for example, now, what if I was like, well, no one's buying this stuff. I've done everything XYZ. Well, no one's buying anything, so I'm just gonna give up.
Oh, you said give up too soon. I thought you said get up too soon. I was like,
Oh,
oh,
get out. Oh, okay. No, so they you give up. So I think that's one thing, is like people give up too soon. Another thing I think is that, not to say that I did a lot of research, but I think that people, again, like back to the introspection and everything, but like literal, like we're always told to kind of get a feel for the market or whatever we're trying to do. Are there too many things? Like for example, we'll talk about t-shirts. I said I make my own t-shirts. Notice I said my own. Everybody and her sister, brother, uncle, auntie is making t-shirts right now.
yeah.
And some of them, I mean, a lot of them are awesome, and I'm like, I make t-shirts for fun. I'm not trying to get in there. Everybody's doing it, So I'm not even gonna stress myself out on that. So I think that not doing our research, not putting enough thought into it, and I do think that, like, having some sort of support, if we want to call it a network or whatever, we can, but having some kind of a support system is important. So if you don't have people encouraging you, or even with Lana that just called, if you don't have those kind of messages coming in your ear, it would be easy to get discouraged. So, I mean, it's just really funny because, like I said, wasn't in my plan. I didn't say I'm going to retire and have a business. But I have people, they'll send me pictures of things. Girl, I saw this and I thought about you. And they'll send me a picture of something. Or there are people who think I can really do more than I can. You know, they'll be like, girl, can you make, like, I could. It'd take a minute. And yeah.
It would
So,
take a minute, but I mean,
yeah. So having support and encouragement. But even without that, like I said, it wouldn't deter me because, you know, I'm about to be 61. I know what I like and I know what I want to do. But maybe 20 or 30 years ago, I might have doubted more.
mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And then I think people, especially with crafting things, I think people just like jump in there and spend a whole lot of money up front. They like spend way too much. And then they're really discouraged because it's like, I spent $400 for this sewing machine and da 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 da, and I'm not doing anything, And I think one maybe last or close to last thing I would say is like being honest about what your skills are. Because let's see, so I follow a lot of people, mostly on Facebook, but I follow a lot of, crafters and people who sew and things. And you see, and most of them, just because I like, I don't know, this is so much more interesting, but it's mostly, Black girls craft, Black women sewing, embroider, whatever. But they'll be well, how they want to know how long is it going to take? I want to get into designing my own clothes. And I'm like, girl, you just bought your sewing machine last week. Can you, so I think sometimes it's
sort of a haste to like create.
Yeah, we overestimate our ability. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's some of that, like, I'm almost hesitant to say it, but sometimes we're overconfident. And that's okay because
part of a good businessman is knowing their strengths.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not good at logistics, so you need to hire somebody who's good at logistics, or maybe you're not great at machinery, so we hire accountants.
Like I would not dare try to start my own website, because there are things like that. So anyway, so what I did though, I hope this doesn't count as plugging, but I'm not like giving names or anything. What I did was I found a platform, for entrepreneurs, but it's for Black people by Black people, So I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm doing in that regard. There looks to be like a lot of support. I'm literally just getting set up. I'm learning how to take the right kinds of pictures. So it's not it's not the thing on my sewing table like some of, so but I signed up for that. I kind of like waited, looked around. An old friend from high school was like, you should check these people out. And so there's the word of mouth. So hopefully that'll work for me. I'll be able to learn some things there and from them and all, because the computer thing is not mine, It's like, oh, you need a website. I'm like, no, I don't. Because then I'd be spending more time learning how to do my website than I would be making the things that bring me joy. So
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Earlier in your explanation, you talked about the right kinds of messages that people need to hear early in life to become entrepreneurs, or at least become confident to kind of go for what they want. And I noticed you said Ari's doing something, your son who works at the SEC is doing something, your other son is doing something. They're all starting their own businesses. They're all doing things. They all believe in themselves. And they all, maybe even if they didn't get like a specific degree, they're like working to make something from nothing. So what did you tell your children to kind of spark something in them? Or what do you believe that you told your children? And if you don't want to answer that, because there are, lots of things, what would you tell people listening who may want to become entrepreneurs, but haven't really heard the most positive feedback?
I'm like kind of like almost wanting to laugh because again, it's that thing where you there was no intention to say that you guys are all going to be entrepreneurs, but it just struck me because Ari, my daughter, she she started our nonprofit. And then I think my younger son will probably end up doing something with his camera because he's really, he's got this desire in that direction. He's just the youngest. We joke and say he's still finding his way. I don't think I sent them a message about entrepreneurship in our family. Like, we, aside from my mother, there weren't role models or anything, but I will say that what I did was gave them space to try things.
Interesting. Do you think that kind of helps in terms of entrepreneurship, like just giving them the space to try and fail again?
Oh, absolutely. Like even in life. One of my sons can even now, so he was, all of them played sports. He was really passionate about baseball all the way through high school, was a very good baseball player, but didn't have aspirations for that, but will always point back to the lessons he learned playing team sports that benefit him now. So I think that what it is as a mom or as someone who's worked with children all of my adult life, I would say that just anything we can do to build confidence in children and in young people is it's like gold. It's like
For sure.
gold. And then I would add as a Black and Asian woman that we have, in addition to building confidence, is like building this pride in our culture and who we are. And so like my dad was always like, what are you talking about? How can, like, he really had us puffed up. You're Black and you're Asian. Whenever you put two things together, the result is going to be so much better. Those were the kind of answers that we got when we came home and we were upset because someone called, call me a striped zebra and I'm all upset about it or whatever. Anything from there to the N word. They had this ready response that made us be like, oh, well, we got this. And just everything they did was to build pride in who we were. And even like full circle, my daughter coming home and telling me that she shared about creativity and crafting as a cultural legacy passed on, that circled back and gave me a lot of pride in who I am and what I'm doing. And she's my best cheerleader. She's one of my strongest encouragers. And then even my son, my second son, I was like, oh yeah, I'm trying to get this LLC, blah, blah. And so we laugh because man is consulting for, I don't know, corporations and stuff. So it's apples and oranges, but we're having the same experience because we're both applying for business licenses. So I think it's just building the confidence, And then my oldest one, he sends an Instagram handle or whatever you call it. And I'm like, okay, what's this for? And he's like, I finally started putting my pictures out there. And so it's just like, I just think we have a family atmosphere that everybody encourages everybody else. And it's like, oh, okay, try it. We got your back. We'll help. What can we do? And so, yeah.
For sure. That was a great answer. Definitely, it's easier to build strong people than fix broken ones. So
yes.
it's definitely important to build confident children so they can go out and just have the confidence to fail. Because many entrepreneurs do fail and many succeed, but many will fail. But it's good to give them the confidence to know that their whole identity isn't tied to that. So that's awesome. That's really awesome. And I only have one more question left, and it's something I usually like to end with. What books are you reading right now?
Oh my gosh, I have right before we got on the line, I was reading from my grandson to be about the solar system. But
nice.
I was real disappointed because and then I'm a little bit embarrassed because I really just started reading Octavia Butler books in the last
like Kindred or
So right now, yes, I'm listening to Kindred, but on the DVD, from the library, of course. And I'm in a rental car and it doesn't have a DVD player.
Oh, man.
So to them also, yeah, I started listening to My Grandmother's Hands, but it's like workbook-ish. And so I'm like, you need to buy this. I always have several books going at once. I'm also reading a book about designing clothing patterns. And
What book is that called, if you don't mind me asking?
I have to get back to you on that. I don't remember the exact name. The author is Cal Patch, like a patch on your clothes, but I can't remember the exact name because there were several of them. And then I'm also like 2/3 of the way through Cast. So yeah.
Cast is very popular right now. That's about
Yeah.
The system in India and how it relates to the system in America, correct?
Yeah, and they're also, so she's comparing and contrasting, yes, the caste system in India, but also like in Nazi Germany, and where
Wow.
Jewish people were, and things. And so, yeah, I read a lot of books that have to do with justice and equity. So yeah, and a book club I'm in, we're about to start reading The Sum of Us, probably next month. So yeah. So I really started reading Octavia Butler because I'm like, you need to read some fiction. Oh, and then the other book was dang, what is her name? The sequel to Children of Blood and Bones.
Oh,
So,
Tomi Adeomi.
Adeomi?
Yes.
Yes. So the other one is Vengeance, and I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Vengeance. Yeah.
I just finished that, and the ending was like, talk about a cliffhanger. So yeah.
There's a 3-book series. So
Yes, but the third one's not out yet. Is it?
Yeah,
Is it
it's
out?
not out yet.
Oh,
And
okay. I was gonna say, is it out?
here. So the movie should be out in the next 2 years.
Yeah, I'll be ready for it. So anyway, it's like, yeah, I never am reading just one book at a time. So.
Thank you so much.
This is fun.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you about your journey, about like your thoughts on entrepreneurship, and thanks to the caller on the line for coming in. I also wanted to mention that you can follow us on Instagram. We now have an Instagram site for NCNW Rankin Mon Valley Pittsburgh. So just search our name there and you will be able to follow us. We also air our PCTV episodes every first Friday of the month. And if you miss an episode, you can watch on demand on the PCTV website, and that is pctv21.org, and you can click watch now. Thank you so much, Miss Julie Brazier. I appreciate you coming on, answering questions, and just having an awesome conversation. It's been very enlightening and insightful.
Thanks for having me. Thank you so much. I don't know what to say. I just appreciate it. And it is always fun to be able to share our story.
For sure.
Talk, so.
Yeah. Right? I mean, that's great. That's what the space is here for.
Awesome.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and yeah, have a great night.
Yes, you too. Blessings. Thanks again. Bye-bye.